Good day, class. So our lesson for this day is about solving quadratic equations using quadratic formula. So in the past days, we have discussed solving quadratic equations by some methods. First, we have the extracting the square root, next by factoring, and recently we have discussed solving quadratic equations by completing the square. And now, we have another method of solving quadratic equations using quadratic formula. Okay, so let's remember that a quadratic equation has a standard form: a x squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. So in our first meeting, we have discussed this quadratic equation. Okay, so a x squared is the quadratic term, and a is the coefficient of the quadratic term. Bx is the linear term, and b is the coefficient of the linear term. And c, this is the constant term. Okay, and now, so I will not discuss how the quadratic formula is derived, but you can search it on the book or in the internet on how to derive quadratic formula. You use the completing the square, okay? So such that you solve for x, okay? So what is a quadratic formula? Okay, this is the quadratic formula. Okay, so quadratic formula. So we solve for x. So this is your variable. X is equal to negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, so this is the quadratic formula. A, B, C here are the coefficients of the quadratic equations. So A is the coefficient of the quadratic term, B is the coefficient of the linear term, and C is the coefficient of the constant term or the constant term itself. Okay, so you're going to be familiar of this equation. Okay, so always remember this equation. This formula, okay? This formula, if you forgot to solve, or the method of using the three methods, the factoring, extracting the square root, and completing the square, this formula is always come in handy. Okay, let's have an example. So we have this example: solve the equation x squared minus 5x minus 6 is equal to 0. So the quadratic equation is in standard form. So let's now identify the coefficients. So a here is equal to 1. Since there is no coefficient here, so it's understood that the coefficient is 1. B is the coefficient of the linear term, which is negative 5. Okay? Ayaw jud kalimot sa sign. And then, ang C, we have negative 6. So first is to identify the coefficients. Okay, we have A, 1, B, negative 5, and C is equal to negative 6. Okay, so let's start solving the quadratic equation using the quadratic formula. Okay, so what is the quadratic formula? Okay, the quadratic formula, okay, we have x is equal to negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So please remember, okay? So let's have the solution. So x is equal to, okay, you substitute what is b. B is negative 5 plus or minus square root of b, negative 5 square minus 4. A is 1 and c is negative 6. All over 2 times a is 1. Okay, you simplify. Okay, we have, this is negative times negative 5 is, we have positive 5 plus or minus, okay, square root of, we have 25 minus negative 4 times 1 times negative 6 is plus 24. Okay, 2 times 1 is 2. Okay, next we have 5 plus or minus square root of 25 plus 24 is 49. Okay, and then all over 2. So this is equal to 5 plus or minus square root of 49 is 7 over 2. So we have two values of x. So you need to separate them. So we have x is equal to 5 plus 7 over 2, or x is equal to 5 minus 7 over 2. Okay, so our x now is, we have 5 plus 7 is 12 over 2, which is equal to 6. Or we have here x is equal to 5 minus 7 is negative 2 divided by 2. So x is equal to negative 1. So the values of x are, so we have our solution set. So we have negative 1 and 6. Okay, so let's have another example. So the next example is to solve the equation 2x squared plus 3x minus 7 is equal to 0. Okay, so first is to transform the equation into standard form. So it is already in standard form. Now let's identify the coefficients. So we have a is 2, that is correct. B is 3. And c is equal to negative 7. Okay, so remember the quadratic formula. We have x is equal to negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, now let's solve the equation. So we have x is equal to, you substitute the values. So we have b is 3, so negative 3 plus or minus square root of b is 3 squared minus 4 times 2 times negative 7 all over 2 times 2. Okay, now simplify. We have this is negative 3 plus or minus square root of, this is 9 plus 4 times 2 times 7 plus is negative times negative is positive. 4 times 2 is 8 times 7 is 56 all over 4. So we have x is equal to negative 3 plus or minus square root of 9 plus 56 is, we have 65 over 4. Okay, so can we simplify square root of 65? Okay, 65 has no factor that is a perfect square. So we cannot simplify this. So it's already square root of 65. So therefore, the values of x is equal to negative 3 plus square root of 65 all over 4, or we have x is equal to negative 3 minus square root of 65 all over 4. So our solution set is equal to negative 3 plus square root of 65 over 4 and negative 3 minus square root of 65 over 4. So yun na. Okay. Okay, let's have another example. So we have this problem. Solve the equation x minus 1 quantity squared is equal to 4x minus 5. Okay, the first thing we do is to simplify this one. Okay, you need to find the product of this one, and then after that, you transform it to standard form. Okay, so let's first solve. What is x minus 1 quantity squared? That is x squared minus 2x plus 1 is equal to 4x minus 5. Then, we need to transpose this expression to the left side so that we can have a standard form. So we have x squared minus 2x minus 4x plus 1 plus 5 is equal to 0. Okay, 4x is negative 4x, negative 5 sa left-hand side would become positive. And then, you simplify, combine like terms. So you have x squared minus 6x plus 6 is equal to 0. So we already have a quadratic equation in standard form. Now, let's identify the coefficients. So what is A? Okay, A is 1. B is negative 6. And C is positive 6. Okay, correct. Okay, now, we are going to solve this using the quadratic formula. So we have x is equal to, your B is negative 6 plus or minus square root of negative 6 quantity square minus 4 times A is 1 and C is 6 all over 2 times A, which is 1. Okay, simplify. So we have this is negative times negative 6 is positive 6 plus or minus square root of negative 6 squared is 36. Negative 4 times 1 times 6 is negative 24 all over 2. Okay, so we have 6 plus or minus square root of 36 minus 24 is we have 12 over 2. Okay, so we have 6 plus or minus 12 can be written as 4 times 3, or it is just 2 square root of 3 over 2. Okay, we distribute 2. Since this is a monomial in the denominator, you distribute, so we have 6 over 2 is 3 plus or minus 2 over 2 is 1, so we have square root of 3. So we have x is equal to 3 plus or minus square root of 3. So what is now our solution set? So our solution set is we have 3 minus square root of 3 and 3 plus square root of 3. Okay, so now it's time for you to solve. So in your activity notebook, Solve each of the following equations using the quadratic formula. So we have number 1, x squared plus 4x plus 1 is equal to 0, and number 2, negative 3x squared minus 7x plus 9 is equal to 0. Okay, just put it in your activity notebook, and we will just check the solutions of this problem when I come home. Okay, goodbye.